Well, you could call it a metamorphosis after he spent millions of dollars to build what was likely the world's largest fact-checking operation. Mark Zuckerberg said Meta will stop attempting to verify the truth of posts on the social media platforms of Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. Take a listen.
The recent elections also feel like a cultural tipping point towards once again prioritizing speech. The fact-checkers have just been too politically biased and have destroyed more trust than they've created, especially in the US.
But why? After 8 years of fact-checking, which was triggered by years of being accused of not doing enough to fight disinformation, why? Critics say it's Zuck cozying up to Trump, many media pointing out Zuckerberg's conciliatory moves toward the president-elect in recent weeks. Here's PBS News.
We know he's visited Mar-a-Lago, he's dined with President-elect Trump, he's donated to the Trump Inaugural Fund, he just named Dana White, the CEO of UFC and a longtime Trump ally, to Meta's board. And here's what the president-elect, Donald Trump, said today when he was asked about this shift by Meta.
Honestly, I think they've come a long way. Meta, Facebook, I think they've come a long way.
Do you think he's directly responding to the threats that you have made to him in the past with these officials?
Yeah, probably.
Probably. And the New York Times reported that last week Zuck elevated Joel Kaplan to the company's most senior policy role. He is the highest-ranking Meta executive who is closest to the Republican Party. Zuck's announcement came as Kaplan appeared on Fox and Friends, a favorite show of Trump's.
We're announcing these big changes as of 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
If you're making big changes, does that mean you were doing something wrong before?
There's no question that there's an opportunity here with a new president taking office, as I said, who really believes in free expression.
Just a few things to point out here. One, Political reviewed Trump's Save America book published last year and wrote that Trump had accused Mark Zuckerberg of plotting against him during the 2020 election and said that the Meta chief executive would spend the rest of his life in prison if he did it again. A bit of context. Two, Trump has a litany of lawsuits against various media outlets who did factual reporting that he did not like or agree with. And three, why does all this matter? Well, over the years, the percentage of U.S. adults who say they get at least sometimes their news from social media has risen to 54%. So what impact will this have on everyone like them? This development raising concern in the U.S. and overseas about the rise of disinformation and the future of fact-checking. Joining us from London is our guest, Mark Frankel, Head of Communication and Policy at Full Fact and former BBC social media editor. Mark Lowen, thank you for joining us here on Scoop. Does it feel like your profession is under assault?
Well, it's a very dark day. It's been a very difficult week for us, fact checkers across the world. I mean, I should say that this is a decision that affects US fact checkers primarily at the moment. We're still waiting to see what Mark Zuckerberg and Meta will do around the world. Here in Europe, we're looking at it very anxiously. I mean, to the points that you've raised in your report so far, I think it's really important to understand that Meta has always been very applauding of the work that fact checkers have done. When we joined the program, Full Fact, the organization I work for, back in 2019, we were invited to do so in a spirit of collaboration, and we have enjoyed doing so, and we've never faced any criticism. So, we absolutely refute this idea that somehow independent fact checking is politically biased, that we're encouraging of censorship. What we have done rigorously, impartially, fully transparently over many, many years is work with Meta to try to help them to label what is clearly misinformed that's spreading on their platforms. The other thing to say about this is that quite a large volume of the content that fact checkers are looking at is not at all political. They could be memes, they could be AI images, they could be things that people are sharing that have nothing to do with mainstream politics whatsoever. There's a fairly small percentage actually that is related to politics. So that I think is a very important point to make. The other important point to make is that fact checkers that joined the program that was set up 8 years ago had to do so through a very rigorous accreditation process where we had to abide by codes of conduct. We had to be very clear about our methodologies. We had to sign up to robust procedures for what we were doing, all of which we did understandably and freely and signed up with them in the spirit of what they were looking to do. None of these things have changed. The level of misinformation on these platforms has not substantially reduced. In fact, in many ways, it's increased as we've seen more AI content emerge, as the technology has changed and shifted, and as these platforms have gained more fans and followers over the years. So this isn't a problem that suddenly evaporated. I think what's changed is the political climate to which you.
Yeah, and the other thing, interesting to point out, other fact checkers share your sentiment, Mark, that they didn't get any negative feedback from Meta or from Zuckerberg. There was 8 years worth of data on this fact checking program. He could have easily shown evidence if there were evidence about it, but there wasn't any that he distributed. So he was a champion of fact checking, and now he moves to this critic. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I think, look, there are clearly political headwinds. He's mindful of what happened in November. He's, as your report set out very clearly, there have been appointments made to the oversight board. There has also been a change in terms of the top with Nick Clegg's departure. All of these things point to a desire that Meta clearly has to get closer to the incoming Trump administration, and with that, some of the things that they hold dear. But I mean, I think the other thing to bear in mind is that there are a lot of conservative organizations that have been supportive of fact checking and involved in fact checking. This isn't some kind of liberal preoccupation. This affects us all equally. We all see misinformed content, false information online all the time. So this shouldn't be seen through a partisan lens. And all, as Mark Zuckerberg admitted freely in the video statement that he issued earlier this week, all that we are likely to see as a consequence of this decision is more bad information circulating online.
Yeah, just to be clear, there are facts, but there are not alternative facts, right, Mark? I'd like you to listen to what Yael Eisenstadt had to say while on MSNBC. She spent 6 months at Facebook in 2018, the global head of election integrity operations for political advertising. Here's how she reacted to Zuckerberg's decision.
We know study after study has shown, including internal studies from Facebook's own teams that were exposed by whistleblowers, that facts do not spread as fast as hate speech, as salacious content, and it is their algorithms, which are being tuned to maximize engagement, that are actually contributing to political disinformation more than any individual on the platform itself.
Mark, is that your sentiment too, that the problem here isn't fact checking, it isn't community notes, it's the algorithm that is on these social media platforms?
Well, algorithms operate in a number of different ways, and clearly they prioritize what people are drawn to, but they can also be manipulated, and we've seen evidence of this in the past, not just at Meta, but across all social platforms. And Meta will periodically talk about what they are prioritizing. For example, in the past, they have prioritized more news content, more video content. They've pivoted towards entertainment or the kind of content that you might not share with your friends and family. So clearly there are algorithms at play through this. But I think the key thing here is that irrespective of the algorithms, what we tend to see online is a reflection of what people are drawn to on the internet. And that can be given a boost or down-ranked. And in the recent past, prior to this decision from Meta, the company was working actively with fact checkers to down-rank algorithmically content that was labeled as misinformed or as false. And that was having a beneficial effect because it was dampening the extent to which you or I or anyone else who chooses to be on their platforms was being exposed to that kind of information. So all that we're really going to see as a consequence of the decision that Meta has made today in the US, and hopefully not more broadly around the world, is that there is less of a dampening effect on that kind of information, that kind of false information. And so more people will be exposed to it. More people are likely, therefore, to make the wrong decisions about sharing it and commenting on it. And we will end up in a situation where real life harms are a genuine consequence. I mean, I should add that, here in the UK where I am, there are a whole host of reasons why the throttling, the downranking of this kind of information is important. We had a series of riots here last summer as a consequence of false information that was spread following an attack in Southport, a knife attack, which led to a number of young people being, seriously harmed and being killed. And that led to the spread of violent disorder here in the UK and an enormous amount of destruction and violence. There are real life impacts to this.
Very high stakes, but should it be social media's responsibility to police the truth?
I prefer to see this in terms of verifiable information. None of us have some crystal ball on the truth. This isn't really about somebody or some organization or set of organizations having a monopoly on what is right in the world, but it's about verifiable information. What does the evidence show us? What do people need to understand in order to make informed choices, to be better equipped when they see things online, to know what to avoid and what to share? And if the more people that are out there that can make those kind of decisions for themselves, particularly as they head to elections or they're having to make decisions about their everyday lives, the more that they can be better equipped to make those decisions, the better that we will all be. If they don't see that kind of information, if they're prevented or they're exposed to a large amount of misinformation, the likelihood is that they'll just make misinformed choices, and we will end up in a much more harmful situation.
Real quickly, running out of time, after Elon Musk took over X, we saw an exodus of users leaving, whether it's media organizations or just casual people. Do you think we'll also see that with Facebook or Instagram?
Well, I mean, we've already seen with X when Elon Musk took over X and decided to disband some of the integrity team and the teams that have been constructed to try and deal with the problems that we've been discussing, that there was an exodus of people to other platforms like Blue Sky, for example. I suspect that we will also see some people choose to move away from Facebook and Instagram and Threads as a consequence of this decision. But I think that for a large number of people, I think that the bigger risk is that they will remain on the platform and just continue to see the content that they are seeing and more of that false information that I've mentioned, and be more drawn to it. And that's what really concerns us as fact checkers.
A lot of food for thought. Mark, thank you very much for your time. Mark Frankel joining us from London. He's with Full Fact. Thank you. And that brings us to our quote of the week. It comes from Alex Mahadevan, director of MediaWise, Pointer's digital media literacy project. He wrote, "If Meta is truly following X's example, it will greatly exacerbate misinformation problem on Facebook and Instagram. Take one look at your X feed today. Is it more factual than it was 3 years ago? A crowdsourced fact-checking solution is only as effective as the platform, owners, and developers behind it. And it appears Meta is more interested in more speech than it is in tackling misinformation." That's it for this edition of Scoop. Thank you for watching. Please stay tuned to France 24.